Part 1. The Gathering of Species, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Alliance, shimmered like a sea of stars. Light panels along the walls glowed in soft hues of gold and silver, casting a calm tone across the many species gathered there. The Unity Ball was a moment of celebration, a gathering to mark 100 years of peace between worlds that once battled for control of the stars. Every race had sent their leaders, diplomats, and warriors to take part in this historic night. Humans were among the youngest races in the Alliance. But they had earned respect through courage and creativity. They had no great claws, no wings, no fangs, and no natural armor. Yet they stood equal among species far stronger. Their ability to adapt and their willingness to connect had made them valuable allies. Many saw humans as the glue that held the fragile piece together. Among the crowd moved beings of all shapes and sizes. The crystal-skinned Varani shimmered as light passed through their bodies. The tall, furred Kellner stood near the buffet tables, laughing in deep voices that shook the floor. The delicate errants floated above the ground, their wings beating in a blur of soft motion. Everyone seemed to find someone to talk to or share a drink with. Laughter filled the air. Yet in the far corner, away from the music and lights, one figure stood alone. Her name was Mira. She was the last known member of the Velari species, a race thought to have vanished long ago. Once, her kind ruled vast territories known for their beauty and mystery. They were powerful beings who could draw life energy from others, a gift and a curse that made them feared. Many legends described them as blood drinkers, though few had ever seen one. Myra was their queen, the last of her line, and her presence here was both a symbol of survival and a silent reminder of the past. Her skin held a pale silver tone that caught the light and reflected it softly. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders like dark silk, and her eyes glowed faintly crimson. She wore a gown of smooth, layered fabric that seemed to flow like mist around her. To those who dared look her way, she was mesmerizing and terrifying at once. The air around her felt cooler, as if she carried the silence of space itself. The other guests kept their distance. Some looked at her with quiet fear, others with polite avoidance. None wished to offend her, but none wanted to stand near her either. Stories about her kind still lingered in the minds of the old races. They remembered the wars, the whispers that Velari fed on energy drawn from living beings. To most, the idea of dancing beside one was unthinkable. Mira noticed their glances, but did not let her expression change. She had learned long ago to hide her feelings. She stood near the tall glass window that opened to the endless black of space, where countless stars shone beyond the curve of the station. She watched them quietly. The stars had always been her comfort. They did not judge, they did not whisper. They only burned, steady and bright. Music rose in the hall, soft and graceful. The band played a melody designed to bring all species together. Pairs formed quickly. Tentacles met claws, wings brushed against hands. Light sparkled around those who danced. Mira remained still, her gaze on the stars. It was not anger she felt, nor sadness, but a deep weariness. She had been alive for centuries, yet never had she felt so invisible. Power had once surrounded her name, but now she was little more than a relic of an age gone by. Then came the humans. A small group entered through the wide silver doors. Laughing and talking as they admired the strange beauty of the hall. They wore their simple but sharp uniforms, black and blue with silver trim. Among them walked a man named Daniel. He was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was an engineer from Earth, invited to the ball for his work on the new fusion relay that powered many Alliance stations. His job had saved hundreds of lives during a power failure a few months earlier, and this invitation was a quiet reward for his service. Daniel looked around the hall with open curiosity. Every new face fascinated him. He smiled at the towering Kellner, nodded at the gentle errants, even waved at a curious group of small insect like Trini who buzzed near the lights. He was not the type to be shy, but even he could feel the invisible tension that hung near the far corner of the hall. His gaze followed it until he saw her. Mira, for a moment, he stopped walking. She stood perfectly still, her figure framed by the light of distant stars. Something about her presence drew him in. It was not fear or beauty that held him, but the quiet sense of loneliness he saw in her eyes. He had seen that same look once before, in the eyes of an old ship drifting alone through deep space, forgotten by all. It made him feel an ache he could not explain. The others noticed where he was looking. One of his human friends leaned closer and whispered, "That's the Valari Queen. They say she can drain a person's life with a touch." Daniel frowned slightly. "She's here as a guest. Same as us." The other shrugged. "Maybe, but I wouldn't go near her if I were you." Daniel smiled a little, his curiosity stronger than fear. He had always believed that stories often hid the truth. He watched as everyone around her avoided her, like she carried some invisible wall. Then he remembered what this event was meant to be: the Unity Ball, a celebration of connection. It felt wrong to see someone left out, no matter who she was. He excused himself from the group and began walking toward her. Heads turned as he crossed the floor. Conversations paused. The music continued, but the soft rhythm now carried a note of tension. No one had approached the Valari Queen all night. Mira noticed his movement, but did not turn. She assumed he was just passing by. When he stopped beside her, she finally glanced at him. Daniel looked up at the stars as she did, his tone calm and friendly. "Beautiful view," he said. For a second she said nothing. Her voice, when it came, was soft and smooth. "Yes, the stars never change. They keep their distance." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe, but sometimes it's good when someone gets close." That made her turn her eyes toward him fully. He met her gaze without flinching. She had expected fear, the kind she always saw when someone met her red eyes, but Daniel's expression was steady and kind. There was no trace of fear in him. "You are human," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Daniel, engineer from Earth." "Mira of the Valari," she said, though he already knew. The air between them felt charged, as if two different energies were meeting for the first time. "Do you not fear me, human?" Daniel shook his head. "If the Alliance trusts you to be here, then so do I. Besides, fear doesn't help anyone." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "You are strange, so I've been told," Daniel said, laughing lightly. He extended his hand toward her. A simple gesture, a human greeting. Around the hall, whispers spread. No one had dared touch her. Some thought he was foolish, others admired his courage. Mira looked down at his hand. Her instincts told her not to take it. Her kind had been shunned for centuries because of what they could do. But there was no hunger in her now, no danger, only surprise. Slowly, she placed her cool, pale hand in his. The contact was brief, but something passed between them. A spark, a warmth she had not felt in ages. It was not the draining pull of life energy, but a gentle current of connection. For the first time, she felt alive in a way that had nothing to do with power. Daniel smiled. "See? Nothing to fear." She withdrew her hand slowly, studying him with quiet wonder. The others around them began to murmur louder, unsure of what they had witnessed. The music played on, but now the rhythm felt different, lighter somehow. Mira looked away from the crowd and back at Daniel. "Why did you come to me?" she asked. He shrugged slightly. "Everyone else was busy finding someone to talk to. You looked like you could use a conversation." She tilted her head. "Do you always approach strangers without thinking of danger?" "Not always," Daniel said. "But sometimes the risk is worth it." Her eyes softened. "You are unlike others." "And you are not what they say," Daniel replied. For a moment, the two simply stood there, side by side, looking at the stars beyond the glass. Around them, the party continued, but neither paid much attention. In that small space near the window, something rare had happened. A bridge had formed between fear and understanding. Mira felt a quiet warmth inside her chest. It was small, but real, something she thought lost long ago. Perhaps this human was foolish, or perhaps he was brave enough to see what others could not. She did not know yet, but she wanted to find out. The night went on. The lights dimmed slightly as the next melody began. Daniel excused himself to return to his group, but before he left, he turned to her once more. "It was nice meeting you, Mira." Her voice was calm. "And you, Daniel?" As he walked away, she found herself still watching him. The stars outside continued their endless glow, but now, for the first time in many years, Mira felt that something new had begun. A small spark in the dark, bright enough to change everything that would come after. Part 2, The Touch of Curiosity. The following day, the station above Epsilon Gate was alive with motion. Ships arrived and departed, their engines glowing against the vast black of space. Inside the main concourse, banners from every world in the Alliance waved in soft artificial air. The Unity Ball had ended, but its memories still lingered. Everyone was talking about the human who dared to touch the Valari Queen. Daniel had returned to his work early that morning. He was an engineer, not a diplomat, and felt more at home among machines than among grand speeches. The energy relays on the lower decks had been unstable for days, and he was determined to fix them before the council met again. As he walked through the long corridors, he heard whispers following him. Some voices carried amusement, others disbelief. "That's the one," a Trini whispered from the wall. "The human who touched her hand." "Madness," another voice replied. "He is lucky to be alive." Daniel ignored the gossip. He knew what they thought, but fear and curiosity had always been part of human nature. He smiled as he adjusted his tool belt and entered the maintenance sector. Machines were simpler than people. If something was broken, you fixed it. There were no politics or rumors, just logic and work. Meanwhile, Iris sat in her private chamber at the upper level of the station. The walls glowed faintly with soft blue light, matching her calm expression. She had not slept. Her thoughts kept circling back to the strange human who had reached for her without fear. No one had done that in centuries. Even her own kind, before their fall, had kept distance from her throne. Power had always created walls, not bridges. She stood near the window again, looking at the same sea of stars. She could feel their silent rhythm, their unchanging light. Yet now she also felt something else, a quiet curiosity. She had spoken. Too many species in her long life, but none had been as direct as that human. His warmth, his voice, the strange courage in his eyes, they lingered in her thoughts more than she wished to admit. A soft chime broke the silence. Her aide, a small robotic sphere named Vex, floated into the room. "Your Majesty, the Council has requested your presence in 2 hours. Mira nodded. "Understood." Vex hesitated before speaking again. "There is also news circulating through the station. It concerns last night." "I am aware," she said, her tone even. "They speak of the human, His Majesty. Many question why he still lives." Mira turned her gaze to the stars. "Because I chose not to harm him. That should be enough for them." Vex whirred softly. "Some are not so easily satisfied." She gave a faint smile. "They never are." 2 hours later, the Grand Council chamber filled with representatives from every major species. Long tables formed a circle beneath a high dome filled with glowing patterns that shifted with light. Daniel was not supposed to attend, but his work on the energy systems brought him to the floor just before the meeting began. He kept to the back, watching the leaders gather. Mira entered last. The room grew quiet. Even those who claimed not to fear her turned their heads slightly away. She walked with measured grace, her long gown flowing like smoke behind her. Her presence commanded silence. When she reached her seat, the chair seemed to absorb the light around her, creating a soft halo. The council leader, a being made of light and form named Alurin, rose to speak. "We are gathered to renew our vow of unity," he said. "Last night, bonds were formed among our people. But there are also questions we must face." His glowing eyes turned toward Myra. "Some of our members are concerned about the presence of the Valari. Old fears remain." Myra's expression did not change. "Fear is a habit easily kept. I came here in peace. Peace must be seen, not only spoken," Alurin replied. "The incident last night has raised concern." Mira's voice was calm. "Do you mean the handshake?" Several members murmured. Alurin nodded. "It is said that the human touched you." "Is that true?" Daniel, still in the back of the hall, froze as eyes turned in his direction. Myra's gaze followed, resting on him. She could have ignored the question, but she chose not to. "Yes," she said softly. He offered his hand in friendship. I accepted. The hall filled with whispers again. Some were shocked, others curious. Aliran raised a glowing hand for silence, and no harm came to him. "None," Mira replied. "Should that surprise you?" Aliran's form shimmered slightly. "It is only that your kind was once known for drawing energy from others." Myra's gaze grew colder. "Once, the past does not define the present." Her tone carried strength, and the chamber fell silent again. Daniel could sense the weight in her words. She had been defending herself for centuries, and even now, surrounded by supposed allies, she still had to prove her worth. After the meeting, as the council members dispersed, Daniel waited until most had left before approaching her. Guards gave him uneasy looks but did not stop him. Mira stood near the steps of the chamber, looking down at the floor's glowing patterns. When she saw him, her expression softened slightly. "You should be careful," she said. "Your people will not thank you for standing near me." Daniel smiled lightly. "They can manage. I just wanted to see if you were all right." "I am," she said. "I have faced worse than whispers." He nodded. "Figured as much. Still, for what it's worth, I meant what I said last night, and what was that?" She asked. "That fear doesn't help anyone." For the first time, a small, real smile appeared on her lips. "You truly believe that?" "I do." "You can't build peace if everyone's scared to even talk." Her gaze turned thoughtful. "Yeah. You speak like a diplomat, yet you are not one." "Engineers build things," Daniel said. "Sometimes we build more than machines." That simple answer made her pause. There was something honest in it, something pure. She found herself studying him again, trying to understand the strange force that made him approach her without hesitation. In his presence, the air around her felt less cold. "Tell me," she said softly, "do humans always speak so openly?" "Not always," Daniel admitted. "But sometimes we forget we're supposed to be afraid." She looked toward the distant window, where the stars shimmered above the station's dome. "Perhaps that is your greatest strength." Later that evening, Daniel returned to the maintenance decks. The power readings had grown unstable again, and he wanted to finish the repairs before rest hours. The corridors were quiet, the hum of the engines the only sound. As he worked, his mind wandered back to Mira's words. There was a grace in her sadness, a quiet strength in how she endured isolation. He had met many kinds of beings across the stars, but none like her, unseen to him. A pair of eyes watched from the shadows of the upper balcony. Two alien officers from the Draxan faction whispered to each other. "He grows close to her," one said. "That is dangerous." "The council will not allow it," the other replied. "If she gains even one loyal ally, the balance will shift. We must act before that happens." Their words were carried away by the low hum of the reactors. Daniel continued his work, unaware of the danger building around him. Mira, meanwhile, stood again by the observation window in her quarters. The stars were the same as always, yet her mind was restless. She replayed their conversation over and over. His words were simple, yet they carried a meaning she could not ignore. For the first time in ages, someone had seen her as more than a symbol of fear or power. She had met countless leaders who bowed from fear, but not one who smiled without hesitation. Vex floated near her shoulder. "You seem thoughtful, Majesty." "I am thinking of the human," she said quietly. "The engineer?" "Yes, Daniel." Vex beeped. "He has caused much talk." "He has caused something more," she said. "Something I cannot yet name." She turned away from the stars and walked to the center of her chamber. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the table, where a small holographic flower glowed softly, a symbol from her world long gone. The petals shone like blood and glass, fragile yet bright. She looked at it and whispered, "Perhaps not all light comes from the stars." In the lower decks, Daniel finished his repairs and packed his tools. The lights around him flickered for a moment, then stabilized. He sighed in relief and leaned against the wall. The hum of the reactors soothed him. He looked out the small window, where the same stars twinkled in silence. Maybe I'll see her again tomorrow, he murmured. At that same moment, far above, Mira stood in her chamber, gazing at the same cluster of stars. Two souls on different levels of the station, looking at the same sky. The night was quiet, but something new was beginning, something neither could explain yet. A fragile thread had formed between them, woven not from duty or fear, but from simple, honest curiosity. And that thread would soon change everything. Part 3. Shadows Behind the Alliance. The following days passed quietly aboard the Epsilon Gate station. The Unity Ball had ended. The echoes of music were replaced by the usual hum of engines and the distant chatter of workers. Yet beneath the calm, something had shifted. Everyone talked about the handshake between the Valerie Queen and the human engineer. The event had become a subject of rumor in nearly every corner of the STA. Daniel continued his work as if nothing had changed. He moved through the lower decks repairing conduits, calibrating fusion relays, and adjusting energy lines that powered the upper sections. But wherever he went, he could feel the stares. Some crew members treated him like a hero. Others watched him with quiet concern, unsure if his contact with the Valerii had changed him somehow. One afternoon, as Daniel finished checking the thermal couplings, his supervisor, an old human named Ross, approached with a worried look. "You've made quite the story for yourself, Daniel," Ross said. "Half the station is still talking about that moment with her." Daniel smiled. "I didn't mean for that to happen. I just thought it was rude leaving her alone." Ross crossed his arms. "The Valerie Queen is not just anyone. There are old fears about her kind. I hope you know what you're doing." "I'm just being polite," Daniel replied. "That's all," Ross sighed. "Be careful, son. Not everyone here believes in the same kind of politeness." He walked away, leaving Daniel thoughtful. He knew Ross was right. The alliance was full of politics and quiet suspicion. Still, he could not regret what he had done. Something about Mira's calm strength stayed with him. She was not the monster people whispered about. Up in the higher levels, Mira felt the same tension. Her days were filled with council meetings and diplomatic discussions. Each representative spoke of unity, but their words often hid mistrust. Some of them watched her closely, waiting for her to make a mistake. Others ignored her entirely. It was the same silence she had lived with for years. Vex floated near her shoulder as she reviewed a data scroll. "Majesty, there has been an increase in communication among the Draxan delegation. Encrypted messages. Unusual timing." Mira looked up from her scroll. "What are they discussing?" "I cannot access the content. But it seems related to the human, Daniel." Her red eyes darkened slightly. "They believe he is a threat because he spoke to me." Vex blinked. "Some might see him as more than that. If they think he has your favor, it could upset the balance of the council." "Balance built on fear is no balance at all," she said quietly. "Still, keep watch. If they move against him, I will know." That evening, Daniel worked late in the power control sector. The lights flickered faintly as he crawled through a narrow passage filled with humming wires. His datapad showed irregular readings in the plasma flow. Something was wrong. The system had been stable for weeks, yet now the relays were spiking dangerously. It looked less like a malfunction and more like deliberate tampering. He ran another scan. "That's strange," he muttered. "Someone's been here before me?" A low sound echoed behind him. He turned, but saw nothing. The maintenance tunnel was long and empty. Only the faint hum of electricity broke the silence. Daniel frowned and climbed out of the passage, heading toward the main control room. When he arrived, the door was slightly open. Inside, two figures stood near the main console, speaking in low voices. Daniel recognized them as Draxan officers. The Draxan were tall, armored, reptilian beings, known for their loyalty to their own kind. They did not notice him at first. Daniel stayed quiet, listening. "Once the overload begins, the fault will appear to come from the lower circuits," one said. "The system will fail, and the Valerie's power grid will be blamed." "The council will not question it," the other replied. "They already distrust her. When the lights go dark, they will see her as the cause." Daniel's eyes widened. It was sabotage. They were planning to destroy part of the station and blame Myra. He had to stop them. He slipped away quietly, heart pounding. The corridors seemed longer than usual. When he reached a secure terminal, he sent an urgent message to the upper level. Queen Mira, this is Daniel. There's a plot against you. I found Draxan officers planning to overload the reactors. You must leave your chamber now. Minutes later, in her quarters, Mira received the alert. The screen flickered as the message played. Vex hovered nervously. Majesty, the lower decks are showing unstable readings. Power is fluctuating. And the human was right, Mira said. We go now. She moved swiftly through the corridors, her long gown flowing like liquid shadow. Guards tried to stop her, but she waved them aside. Seal the upper decks, she ordered. Do not let anyone near the reactors. The lights dimmed suddenly. A deep vibration shook the floor. Somewhere below, the hum of the engines turned into a roar. Daniel was already running toward the control room again, trying to reverse the overload. The Draxan saboteurs saw him and drew small energy weapons. Stop right there, Human One hissed. Daniel dove behind a console as a bolt of blue light scorched the wall beside him. He grabbed a wrench from his belt and threw it at the nearest switch, triggering a cascade of sparks that distracted the attackers. Then he rushed to the control panel, his fingers flying across the keys. The screen filled with warnings. Plasma surge in Sector 12, the computer announced. Emergency shutdown required. Daniel hit the override, but the system resisted. Come on, he whispered. Work with me. Suddenly, the door burst open and Mira entered. The glow of the emergency lights reflected off her silver skin, giving her an almost ethereal look. The two Draxan officers turned their weapons toward her. But before they could fire, she moved faster than any of them could see. In one graceful motion, she disarmed one and sent the other sprawling across the floor. Her red eyes glowed with calm intensity. Daniel stared momentarily stunned. Remind me never to make you angry, he said. Mira looked at him. Can you stop the overload? I can try, but I need time, he replied. Then I will buy it for you. She turned back toward the fallen officers as Daniel worked frantically at the console. Lines of code flashed across the screen. The hum of the reactor grew louder. Sweat formed on his forehead as he tried to stabilize the energy flow. Sparks flew around him, and the air grew hot. I need to reroute power through the auxiliary grid. Daniel shouted, Do it, Mira said firmly. He typed faster, his hands moving on instinct. Finally, with one last command, the system beeped and the alarms went silent. The lights returned to normal, and the vibrations stopped. The danger was over. Daniel let out a long breath and leaned against the console. That was close. Mira stepped closer. You risked your life to warn me. I couldn't let them blame you for something you didn't do, he said simply. Besides, if the station exploded, I'd go with it. Her expression softened. You are a strange man, Daniel, so I've been told, he replied, smiling faintly. The guards arrived moments later and took the Draxan officers away. Alurin and several council members soon followed, demanding explanations. Mira stood tall as Daniel described everything he had heard. The truth spread quickly, and the council's suspicion shifted from Myra to the Draxan faction. Alurin turned to Mira and bowed slightly. It seems we owe both you and this human our gratitude. Mira nodded. The fault lies in fear. Fear blinds even the wise. Daniel added quietly, Maybe now they'll start seeing, instead of assuming. When the council dismissed them, Mira and Daniel walked side by side through the quiet corridors. The chaos had ended. But something new had formed between them. Quiet bond built through trust and danger. At the observation deck, Mira paused. You saved me from a trap meant to destroy my name. I am in your debt. Daniel shook his head. You don't owe me anything. You saved me too, remember? A faint smile touched her lips. Then perhaps we are even. They stood together by the window, watching the stars drift slowly past. The reflection of the galaxy shimmered across the glass. Neither spoke for a while. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was calm, warm, and full of quiet understanding. But beyond the peaceful glow of space, shadows still moved. Somewhere in the dark, others watched the Queen and the human, already planning what to do next. For every bond formed in the light, another force waited in the dark to break it. The story of the Valari Queen and the human had only just begun. Part 4. The bond of blood and light. The Epsilon Gate Station was quiet in the hours before nightfall. The emergency from the Draxan faction had passed, but the tension in the corridors lingered. Every corner seemed heavier now, as if the walls themselves remembered the danger from the day before. Mira stood in her quarters, her crimson eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the chamber. She had spent hours reviewing the council reports and analyzing security protocols. Despite the recent threat being neutralized, she felt an unease she could not shake. Someone somewhere still wanted to see her fail. Vex floated near her shoulder, scanning the incoming communications. Majesty, there are several requests for private meetings from the council and other races. They want to discuss last night's incident. Mira shook her head. Not yet. I will not allow distractions. The station must remain stable. Vex beeped softly. Very well, Majesty. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to the maintenance sector, repairing small issues that remained after the sabotage attempt. His hands moved with skill and calm precision. Yet his thoughts drifted constantly to Mira. He had seen her strength, her calm in the face of danger. And he had also seen a vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to touch. That mix of power and fragility drew him inexplicably to her. As he adjusted a conduit, the lights flickered. It was unusual, and his sensors picked up a minor fluctuation in the energy flow. The station's systems had been restored, yet someone or something was tampering again. Daniel frowned and typed rapidly on his tablet, checking logs and recalibrating the affected circuits. The readings confirmed his suspicion. An energy drain was forming in a restricted sector, close to the upper decks. Realizing the danger, Daniel sent a secure message to Mira. Majesty, there is a sudden energy fluctuation near the upper levels. It may indicate another sabotage attempt. Seconds later, Mira received the alert. Her gaze hardened. Vex, prepare my armor. We may have visitors. Vexward. Shall I summon the guards? No, this requires discretion, Mira replied. She moved quickly toward the observation hallway that led to the upper power sector. Her long gown flowed behind her, brushing the walls like shadows. She was a figure of authority and command, yet in her movements there was elegance and control. Daniel, upon receiving confirmation from Mira that she would investigate, made his way to meet her at the designated hallway. He had a small toolkit and a personal energy scanner. His heart raced. He did not know what to expect, but he knew he could not let her face danger alone. When they met, Mira's eyes softened slightly at the sight of him. You followed? I did, Daniel said. I can help. Very well, Mira said. Stay close. Together, they moved along the narrow corridor that led to the compromised energy conduit. The station lights flickered, and the hum of the reactors grew louder. As they approached, shadows shifted at the edges of the walls. Mira's hand moved instinctively, energy gathering around her fingers. Daniel's eyes widened as he felt the intensity of her power, yet he remained calm. Suddenly a figure leaped from the darkness. A Draxan officer, armed with an energy blade, lunged at them. Mira reacted immediately, blocking the strike with a quick motion and sending the attacker sprawling. Another Draxan emerged from the shadows, but Daniel was ready. He activated a small energy net from his toolkit, trapping the attacker long enough for Mira to neutralize him with a controlled burst of light energy. They continued forward, encountering more attackers. Mira's movements were precise, almost fluid, as she used her strength to protect Daniel while disarming anyone who came near. Daniel, despite his fear, was quick and clever, using his knowledge of the station's layout to guide them and disable security breaches. Together, they moved as one, instinctively understanding each other's abilities, at the heart of the sector. They found the source of the sabotage, a complex device designed to overload the main energy conduit and collapse the upper decks. Daniel's hands flew across the control panel, analyzing and disabling the mechanisms. The Draxan attackers regrouped, preparing for another strike. Mira stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter. "Do not interfere," she commanded. The air around her shimmered, and the attackers hesitated, sensing the immense power she radiated. With a single motion, she unleashed a controlled burst of energy, knocking them back without harming the station. Daniel continued to work, stabilizing the conduit while Myra held the attackers at bay. Then Daniel froze. One of the energy stabilizers sparked violently. He had miscalculated. A surge of energy shot toward him, and without thinking, Myra reacted. She grabbed him, holding him tightly as a beam of light struck her instead. Pain surged through her body, but she did not release him. The energy stabilized in her grip, and Daniel realized the full extent of her power. She had absorbed the dangerous surge to protect him. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, concern etched on his face. Mira's eyes softened. "I am, but you must remain cautious." "This was close." Daniel nodded. "I would not be safe without you." Mira studied him quietly. "There is more than courage in you, Daniel. There is understanding. You do not fear me," shook his head. "I do not fear you because I see who you truly are." The moment passed, but the connection between them deepened. Mira realized that, in centuries of solitude, no one had offered her this kind of trust. Daniel understood her strength and vulnerability without judgment or fear. Suddenly, a warning blared across the station. More energy fluctuations appeared, this time more intense and closer to the core reactor. The Draxan faction was relentless, determined to see chaos reign. Daniel's fingers flew across his tablet, analyzing the surge patterns. Mira readied herself, energy forming around her hands in controlled waves. "We have little time," Daniel said. "I need to reroute the flow, but the stabilizers will not hold if they strike again." "I will protect you," Mira said firmly. Daniel looked at her admiration and trust in his eyes. "Then let's do this together." They moved side by side. Daniel recalibrated the stabilizers, while Mira used her power to shield them from incoming attacks. Sparks flew, and the hum of the reactors grew deafening. Each second was critical. One wrong move could destroy the sector and possibly the station. Then it happened. A final surge threatened to overload the core. Daniel was caught in the open, unable to reach the control panel in time. Mira made a quick decision. She extended her hand, her fingers brushing against his wrist. Energy surged from her body into him, stabilizing the flow instantly. The connection was intense, almost blinding, but Daniel felt a warmth unlike anything he had known. Mira's power flowed into him, yet it did not harm. Instead, it amplified his ability to control the stabilizers. Together, they redirected the energy. The light steadied, alarms ceased, and the hum of the reactors returned to normal. The danger was over. Daniel and Mira stood, breathing heavily, their hands still almost touching. A bond had formed, unspoken but undeniable. It was more than trust. It was a shared strength born from facing danger together. Myra looked at Daniel with quiet intensity. "You are different from the others. You see beyond fear and legend." Daniel smiled faintly. "And you are more than the stories say." For a long moment they simply stood there, side by side, gazing at the steady glow of the station's lights. The chaos of the Draxan sabotage was behind them, but the experience had created something new. They had fought as one, combining courage, strength, and understanding. It was a connection neither had expected, but both could not deny. Later, in her private quarters, Mira reflected on the events. Vex hovered silently. "The human is remarkable," it said. "Few could survive such proximity to your power." Mira nodded. "It is not only survival. He is brave and wise in ways many never learn." Vex tilted slightly. "You seem fond of him." Mira's crimson eyes softened. "Perhaps. He sees me, not the Villari legend. That is rare." Meanwhile, Daniel returned to the lower decks, exhausted but exhilarated. He could not stop thinking about Mira's power, her calm focus, and the moment they shared while channeling energy together. Something fundamental had shifted between them. A bond had formed that went beyond friendship, yet it was not yet named. As the station settled into quiet, the stars outside continued to shine. Mira and Daniel, separated by levels but connected in purpose, had faced danger and emerged stronger. In the silent glow of the cosmos, two beings from vastly different worlds had discovered trust, courage, and a connection that promised to change not only themselves but the future of the Alliance. Part 5: The Queen and the Human. The following morning, the Epsilon Gate station hummed with quiet activity. The previous day's crises had left many unsettled, yet the station continued its usual rhythm. Myra moved through the upper levels with calm grace, observing the crews as they went about their tasks. Even after facing sabotage and assassination attempts, she held herself with the poise of a ruler. Her crimson eyes, once a symbol of fear, now carried something different, a quiet strength that inspired respect. Daniel, meanwhile, was completing repairs in the lower decks. The energy stabilizers now operated at peak efficiency, and he checked the systems one last time before heading to the observation deck. He had not seen Mira since their shared battle with the Draxan saboteurs. Despite the distance between their levels, he felt her presence everywhere on the station. Something about her lingered in his thoughts like a steady light as he ascended toward the upper levels. Whispers filled the corridors. Crew members who had once been wary of the Valari Queen now looked at her with curiosity and cautious admiration. Rumors of the human who had touched her hand and helped save the station had spread quickly. Many now viewed them both as symbols of courage and unity. When Daniel reached the observation deck, Myra was already there, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. She turned as he approached, her expression calm but alert. "You came," she said softly. "I promised I would," Daniel replied, smiling faintly. "I wanted to make sure you were safe." "I am," Mira said, though her voice carried a quiet acknowledgement of the danger they had faced together. "The station is stable, the threat neutralized, and the Council will investigate the Draxan actions. Yet still, there is unease." Daniel stepped closer. "Danger never fully disappears, but you don't have to face it alone." Her crimson eyes softened as she studied him. "You have risked much, Daniel. Not just in the sabotage, but in approaching me when everyone else turned away." "I did what anyone with respect would do," he said. "Fear should not decide our actions." Myra's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Few understand that. Fewer act upon it." They stood together in silence for a moment, the glow of the station lights mingling with the distant stars outside. Then Mira gestured toward the stars. "Do you ever wonder what lies beyond the known worlds?" Daniel followed her gaze. "All the time. But tonight it feels like the greatest discovery is right here." He glanced at her. "Someone who sees the world as it is, not as stories make it out to be." Her expression softened further. "You see me as I am, not as the legends claim. That is a rare gift." Daniel nodded. "It should be common, but fear and assumptions cloud many minds." "Perhaps that is why I am drawn to you," Mira said. "You are human, yet unafraid. You understand more than you know." The quiet between them deepened, filled with unspoken trust and shared experience. The bond forged during the Draxan threat had grown into something stronger, an understanding of each other's courage and character. They did not need words to explain it. Their actions had spoken louder than any conversation could. Suddenly, the communication panel on the deck beeped. Illyrian's voice came through, calm yet formal. "Queen Mira, Engineer Daniel, the Council requests your presence in the main hall. There is a matter of recognition to discuss." Myra's expression remained calm. "Very well. Let us attend." The main hall was brighter than usual, filled with representatives from all member worlds. Every pair of eyes turned toward Mira and Daniel as they entered. Some stared with awe, others with cautious admiration. The council leader Aluron stepped forward, his light form shimmering. "We are gathered to acknowledge an event that has reminded us of the power of courage, trust, and unity." He paused, allowing his words to resonate. "In times past, fear divided us. Stories of the Valari spread distrust, isolating a queen who only sought peace. Last night, one human saw beyond legend and reached out to her. Together, they faced danger and prevented catastrophe on this station. For this, we honor them both." A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Mira's crimson eyes remained fixed on Daniel, her calm presence commanding respect without arrogance. Daniel felt the weight of the moment, realizing that their shared actions had changed perception and attitudes across the station. Where fear had once ruled, admiration now took its place. Allurin continued, "Let this be a symbol for future generations. Unity is not found in avoidance or caution alone, but in courage to act, to trust, and to reach across the divide. The human Daniel and Queen Myra embody this ideal." As the council's words echoed, representatives from various species approached them, offering nods of respect and words of acknowledgement. The fear and whispers that had surrounded Mira seemed to dissolve. She remained composed, yet a faint warmth touched her gaze. For the first time, she felt seen, not for her power, but for her true self. Daniel stepped closer, speaking softly so only Mira could hear. "You did not need my hand, but I am glad I offered it." Myra's lips curved into a soft, sincere smile. "And I am glad you did. That gesture, it changed more than you know." Together, they walked to the center of the hall. The representatives parted, allowing them space. Mira raised her hand slightly, acknowledging the council and the audience. Daniel stood beside her, human who had bridged the gap between fear and understanding. Outside the observation window, stars shone steadily. Their light reflected across the polished floor, casting patterns of silver and gold. The station hummed with life. Yet in that moment, Mira and Daniel existed in their own quiet world. The bond they had formed, through trust, courage, and shared danger, had become a symbol not only to the council, but to every being on the station. Later, as the council adjourned, Mira and Daniel returned to the observation deck. They stood side by side, looking out into the endless expanse. "Do you think they will remember this?" Daniel asked. "They will," Mira said quietly. "The story is no longer about fear. It is about choice, courage, and connection." Daniel nodded. "Then perhaps this is only the beginning." Myra's eyes met his. "Yes, it is only the beginning. The beginning of something far greater than either of us could imagine." For a long while, they watched the stars together. No words were necessary. They had faced danger, built trust, and changed the perception of countless lives. The Valerie Queen, once ignored and feared, now stood at the center of respect and admiration. And the human who reached for her hand had proven that bravery and understanding could overcome the walls built by legend and fear, as the lights of the station dimmed for the night. Mira and Daniel remained together at the window. The stars outside twinkled like countless possibilities, each one a reminder that connection could create power far greater than any force of fear. The Queen and the human had forged a bond that would echo across worlds, a story of courage, trust, and the strength of reaching for another when no one else would. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the Alliance and for them, a promise that even in the vastness of space, understanding could light the way.